So I think everybody really knows what the circular economy is. I'm told that I have to move this way into the spotlight. So everybody knows what the circular economy is. It's basically a tiered system of reuse, repair, and remanufacturing, as well as recycling. So recycling being right at the end, and recycling being sort of like the last case scenario, other than obviously incineration, which is just we don't really want to do at all. But it's not really that new, to be honest. You know, it's been going for years. Remanufacturing was started off by one of the first cases and best cases of remanufacturing started off with the Catapult remanufacturing plant, which was in 1972, I think it was. So that was a long time before, you know, remanufacturing and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation started speaking about it and you know, promoting it and everything. But although it's not new, it's incredibly now. You know, the circular economy has never been more important than it is today. The amount of resources that we don't have, and things like geopolitics and all sorts of other converging problems that we have, are coming together to create one big, huge sustainability problem around resources, around the things that we use every day, around you know, water sanitation and access to clean water, access to rare earth materials, renewable resources, air quality, so many things. And this is obviously the diagram from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So I gave a talk on this last year, and I think some of the stuff I had to say scared a few people. I think tonight we're going to try and be a little bit more positive and start talking about how the web can enable some change and enable the circular economy to be a reality, really, because we're a long way at the moment. We're a long way from the circular economy. So the internet is really helping us move forwards in so many ways, and we're going to hear a lot about that tonight. And I think first up is Mark, who I've worked with for quite a few years, well, for a year or so now on quite a few projects. Mark's been in the business for 20 odd years, and he's been working with people like Coca-Cola and various mega brands, as well as a few small ones as well. I think a couple of that might even be in the room. So Mark, leave it.
Thank you. When you say mega brands, that doesn't mean I always like them. You have to work with some bad people sometimes. So it's been a long time since I've been here, which is, and I'm really surprised at how amazing it is. It's home to the Mighty Boosh. That's the only reason I know Hoxton Square. It probably isn't home to the Mighty Boosh at all, but it feels like it is. So I want to talk to you about IT, about the web, and how enabling that is, but also there's a dark side of light. There's a difficult side of good, and I want to talk a little bit about that as well. So the circular economy is news. It's about the only environmental game that's happening in the boardroom at the moment. It doesn't matter which of my clients I'm talking to, there's a conversation about the circular economy and about resource use. And there's a conversation about the circular economy and consumption. And there's a conversation about the circular economy and population. Because we've got 3 billion more middle class due on the planet between now and 2030, and all of those people want to consume at middle class rates, and we can't carry that. And those 3 billion people don't live in Europe; they live elsewhere. So that population increasingly becomes more important than ours as a market. So who's going to make products for Europe? Probably not the Chinese. They've probably got their own market to make them for. So we have to make products for ourselves. So for me, the circular economy is as much about training and skills and about reshoring as it is about the environment. And that is absolutely crucial, because we've forgotten what we do. We think we design stuff and we make it in China, or we designed in California, made in China. The thing is, every single pair of hands that touches an iPad during manufacture, and there are 146 of them, pairs, not individual hands, 146 pair of hands, every pair of hands has a brain, and every brain is hungrier than ours and wants more. And you know, the emerging world will be better at design than we are. When Africa wakes up and becomes a manufacturing nation, which will be so soon, they're going to be incredible. Amazingly bright, amazingly talented, and amazingly hungry. So who's going to make for us? Where are our raw materials going to come from? So we have to close the loop, because if you haven't got things, you can't make stuff. It's really, really simple. So this isn't just about the environment. This is about the economy. I've been working a long, long time in this field, 20 odd years, and we just called the circular economy common sense. Now it has a name, and that's really good because it's taken it out of the woods and into the boardroom, and I won't ever criticize anyone for that. We also called it waste minimization, recycling, design for sustainability, design for X, industrial symbiosis. This has had a number of names, but this is the first name that's really stuck. So in many ways, we're back to the future. 2015, that's when he went forward to, wasn't it? If this isn't available by next year, I want my money back, okay? This has got to happen as far as I'm concerned. So this isn't new news, this is old news. And it's not throwing stuff away, it's making things that last, it's finding second and third uses for things, repairing stuff, leasing stuff. This is all motherhood and apple pie. And none of my clients at the moment, none of them, have been able to ignore this. And I think it was Ian Cheshire from B&Q who said, if you don't disrupt your business model, somebody else will. That's so true, absolutely true. And there isn't one client that isn't frightened. Because the small and the medium-sized enterprises, they're the ones that hold the future. They're the ones that are nimble enough. The next suite of millionaires will not be wearing suits. They won't be. Not unless they're in fashion. They just won't be. So we need to look at the nimble, disruptive companies. Now, how has IT helped or hindered this? How has the web helped or hindered this? It's really funny. My eldest daughter's 20 and my youngest daughter's 10. And the eldest daughter can just remember life without the web. Just. None of the others can. You don't need to know anything anymore. You just need to know where to look to find it. The gap between amateur and professional is closed. And this is due to the web. And it's a good thing. So there's some good stuff. Firstly, IT and web has allowed a phenomenal information revolution and information exchange. There is nothing that is unknown anymore. It's just a search away. How you manage those searches. Anyone read The Circle over the summer? Yeah? Dave Eggers? No? Go and buy The Circle. No, I'm not going to tell you what to buy. You buy what you want. But The Circle by Dave Eggers is actually about Google, and it's really scary. It's really discomforting. So there is nothing unknown. We can always find it. P2P, peer-to-peer, has been completely enabled by the web. You couldn't have services like Rent Not Buy, Rent the Runway, Halo, Uber, all of these services, you couldn't have them without the web. Daniel's going to talk about his service later, which is a brilliant, brilliant product, a brilliant service. It wouldn't work without the web. I tried to set up a waste exchange project in Bradford in about 1994, and it was limited to Bradford because there was no such thing as the web. Well, there was, but we didn't know what it was in Bradford. In fact, I'm not certain they still do. So the web enables exchange of information, exchange of ideas, exchange of resources, and more importantly, exchange of best practice. How do you spread ideas? You talk about them. You give them oxygen and they'll fly. Similarly with big data, metadata, we've now got near perfect knowledge. In my spare time, I run something called the Do Lectures, which is like TED, but based in Wales and loads better. And some of the conversations we've had with Tim Berners-Lee talking about how he invented the web and why he was driven to do it, and how the web sat on one PC in his office that had a little sticker on saying, "Do not switch off." That's the truth. That was the web. I mean, this is frightening and amazing. The speed of development over the last 20 years have been incredible. There's fix-it guides, hacks, repairs, things that keep stuff cycling for longer, because that's my favorite kind of the circular economy. Buy something that lasts a long time. That's what I like. I like traditional materials that last a long time, and I'll pay more for that because I can't afford to buy cheap anymore. Just doesn't work. So I like to keep things cycling longer, and there's some amazing work going on there with iFixit and other people to keep stuff going. But there's some bad stuff with the web as well, and I don't mean pornography. That's always bad. I mean stuff that enables the web to work. It's been rapid. I talked about this last 20 years being fast-paced. There's a whole load of stuff that's been developed and thrown away, fueled by Moore's law, fueled by the speed of processors. So we're in this period of really aggressive growth and the development that spits out waste and products faster and faster. You've all got something in your pockets that causes harm. You've all got your smartphone in there. And your smartphone is on the fastest development cycle of most products. And your smartphone's got something in there called a tantalum capacitor. And a tantalum capacitor will probably have come from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which, like most countries with the words democratic and republic in them, are neither of those two things. And we know that there's wars fought over these resources, and they're in your pocket. And when the new iPhone Galaxy S5 6 comes out, you will want one. Hands up, guilty. I'm the same. And we've all got our pad and our phone, and we've probably all got a laptop and a desktop and a Kindle. We've probably all got 5 things. And every time we have it early or we buy a new one, then there's a little ripple that shoots around the globe, and somebody, somewhere, has harm occurring to them. And we forget that. We've disconnected that. So this aggressive period of growth is really challenging. Please don't feel guilty about it. That's the way of the world, and we'll change it in other ways. You, by all means, buy less, but there are other things that we need to do. And there's this propensity to have multiple devices, and your fridge will be internet connected. We've heard about the Internet of Things. My jeans blog. If I take a photograph and put a little hashtag, these jeans accumulate all the blogs. It's called History Tag. It's terribly sad and terribly brilliant. So there's a Hyatt denims, and I'm accumulating stories of the things I've done, all the clean things I've done in my jeans. And so we've got this web-enabled world that sometimes seems more like a problem than a solution. But that's only for now. It genuinely is a solution. And then you add into that the social implications of being always connected, always on, always bumping into people as they wander down the bloody road on their phones. I almost ran over someone stepping out in front of me the other day. On average, smartphone users check their phones 150 times a day. I had a scary thing today. I went into Apple to see a so-called genius, to find out why my battery was running out by 10 in the morning. And he looked at where my energy use was going, and the biggest energy use I have is checking the screen. You know, when you just press the bottom button to see what the notification was, and then you press the top button because it wasn't important. That's 15% of the energy that I use. Instagram's only 14%, and I'm an addict. Instagram is like crack. Dreadful. The amount of reassurance we seek from others is astonishing. 40% of people admit to checking their phones on the toilet, and the other 60% are liars. This happens all the time. You're in a cubicle, and you're, hang on a minute, I'm just making a cup of tea. You might hear a bit of water. There's this fear of being idle, checking for phantom rings, feeling stuff going on. This reassurance that we need, this feeling that we're missing out when we witness other people's social media feeds, which have been orchestrated and designed in order to make us feel that we're missing out. Look at me and my bloody great life. That's what we've done. This is all a blip. We will move beyond this. How many of you have been to a gig recently and punched somebody in the back of the head when they've put their phone up? Just me, then. I don't want to see us. I don't want to see Justin Bieber. I don't want to see anyone through somebody else's screen. I'd rather capture it in my mind than have it to show later. And the worst is when they bloody film it and send it to somebody, then ring them and tell them they've sent them a video of Justin Bieber being dreadful. This is a weird world, and good on Kate Bush for banning them at her recent concerts. I've told you my jeans blog and my fridge spams. This is normal. This isn't good. Every internet search you do is responsible for between 0.2 grams of CO2 and 0.7, depending on whether you're talking to Google or Friends of the Earth or the pressure groups. That's significant. It all depends on your device. It depends where the servers are sat and how they're powered. There's lots of unknowns in this. But this is huge. And how many of you play Second Life? Anyone play Second Life? I haven't got time in my first life to play Second Life. But if I stop tweeting, I might. Well, this is really interesting. So an average user in Second Life is online for about 4 hours a day playing this game. And this is really interesting. This is the user, and this is what her avatar looks like. There are no ugly or fat people in Second Life. And I like ugly. I've always embraced the ugly, the imperfect. In a world where everyone's perfect, what becomes attractive? The imperfect, always. Well, here's the thing. An average user uses the same amount of carbon just to power up their avatar per year as a single Brazilian citizen uses to stay alive. So for the same amount of carbon, about half a ton, you can have a Brazilian or an avatar. No euphemism intended there at all. This asks some huge questions. However, all that aside, we're in the development learning curve of the web, and I think the web and IT generally, awesome tools. They will allow information exchange. Without them, the circular economy couldn't happen. Services like Daniel's would not exist. So I welcome them. I'm not really having a go at them. We just need to get through this development phase, and we need to stop buying stuff, put the power in the web, and use thin clients rather than powerful clients and nothing in the web. And we're headed that way. So the solutions are already out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And I love your shoes as well, man. Always have snazzy shoes on. So, I think there was a few things that I forgot to say, which is we're going to do these lightning talks first of all, and then we're going to go into a break. And then after the break, we're going to have a panel discussion for the rest of the evening, or until, what time is it, 10 to 9, something like that. And then we're going to go to the pub and have a few beers and talk a little bit more about circular economy and the web and all of that kind of stuff. So the next person we have up is Louise Armstrong, who's a senior sustainability advisor from Forum for the Future. Louise has been working with Innovate UK and a number of other people who are championing the circular economy. Louise is working in the Systems Innovation Lab in Forum at the moment, which is particularly interesting. And she's been doing all sorts of stuff around, a variety of projects around fashion and futurescapes and future predicting of future forecasting, should I say. I'll hand it over to Louise to kind of talk a little bit more about her slides.
Thank you. Perfect. Cool. So, what I'm going to do for you today is tell a story of two halves. Two bits of work that we've... Am I in the right light spot, by the way? Yeah, okay. It's really bright. Sorry if I'm squinting. Tell you a bit of a story about two pieces of work that I've been working on, which I think happily kind of meld together in this topic that we're exploring together. So I've been doing a piece of work with Innovate UK. They describe themselves as the UK's innovation catalysts, and helping them to really explore how they can take their resource efficiency program to the next level. They've funded a lot in the circular economy, but we know that the circular economy still hasn't become mainstream. So we've been helping to look at, well, what kind of approaches are really going to enable that tipping into the circular economy being normal. Then the other piece of work I want to share with you is something we call Wired for Change. It's just a short think piece gathered on lots of our research with various different tech companies, various different entrepreneurs, and all sorts of other weird and wonderful people. And that's really stating what are the two fundamentals for how digital tech can really enable sustainable change. And happily, these two stories kind of meld together. So, the work we've been doing with Innovate UK, we started off at the point where a lot of the conversation around circular economy is really focused on what are the products and what are the services that are more sustainable, more resource efficient. And there's a lot of innovation happening there, be that material innovation, be that services that people are, kind of the rental service, that kind of thing. And that's really brilliant. But these types of organisations and initiatives are kind of reaching the edge of what they're able to do. At the same time, we did a whole bunch of interviews, and we kept hearing the word business model innovation. It's all about business model innovation, which again is a really important part of reimagining what a circular economy will be. And the moment when these different things came together is when we started talking about the circular economy happening when we actually create new networks of value. That's where different products, different services, different material innovations, different business models can actually all come together to create new flows of exchange. Now, networks are nothing new, and nor are value networks, But what we mean by this is value that is both economic, value that is both socially beneficial, and also environmentally and resource efficient as well. So we think there's something in this. If we're going to really create a circular economy, then we need to create new value networks. And what these value networks need to include is kind of the new flows of different products and services, as I mentioned. It needs to include the flows of skills. It needs to include the flows of information. All of these very intangible things that are often ignored. There's a lot of innovation in the kind of the tangible stuff around the circular economy. Actually, we need to innovate the intangibles as well. And the network really allows you to see those different interconnections and how they kind of work. And we think there's a few aspirations, and we're still testing these out, so these are kind of open to being challenged. What's going to make a really sustainable value network? What's going to make a value network that really enables a circular economy? It's going to need to be flexible and agile. It's going to be, you're going to have to change all the time. The power is going to be shared among many, not shared just among one huge player. And actually, by doing this, you're taking advantage of all the different skills and capabilities and knowledge and know-how that there is around. And we're interested in actually how you design these, how you design and create clashes of the right people who can really enable these new networks to form. Now, the other side of the story, and our work called Wire for Change. These are the two ways we see digital technology really enabling kind of big change. And I mean like big system-changing change. Not just incremental tweaks around the edges. And you'll see some similarities with kind of what I was talking about in the value networks piece. So digital technology, and Mark touched on some of this, it changes the structure of information flows. It means you can now know everything, anything you want to find out about. And we know that knowledge is power. It can simplify things, it can optimize things, and it can change who's acting and why. It changes the motivations for people, and just allows for a bit more democracy around kind of decisions that could be made. And that's exactly the kind of thing you need for new networks to emerge. Then the second thing is this ability to self-organize and really kind of reconfigure things differently. Again, the kind of essentials of what you need for a new value network. Each of us has a kind of unique set of skills and resources, and you can share that with people you don't even know existed yet. That's an amazing capability that we just didn't have at this scale 5, 10, 15 years ago. And it allows us to share those resources more widely, and that's exactly the kind of thing that you're going to need for a circular economy to happen. And then the best thing about it is it's not just information, it's there, but it's actually allowing you the platforms to meet up. The fact that we can all be here as a shared community of people interested in something is a great example of that happening. So, can you kind of see where I'm going yet? I'm basically saying there is a massive opportunity and a need in the circular economy to create these new networks. And we have everything in our ability to actually do this. But if you still need convincing, I'm going to tell you a story about Lizzie. Lizzie lives in Leeds, and she's a great example of someone who's really brought these different things together. She has a couple of different elements to the work she does, something called Remade in Leeds, and she's also been part of really catalysing a network of clothes sharing in her local city as well. So on one hand, Remade in Leeds just came out of an interest in understanding what materials are spare in her local community. She started going to talk to the local textiles mills and finding out what materials they had spare. What's the stuff that's being thrown out? She went to the spinners and all sorts of other kind of people that are behind the scenes in our textile production, just in the UK. And she started forging these new relationships with people, and they started giving her stuff. It was stuff they were throwing out for free that they weren't even making use of at all. She started pulling these things together and designing clothes, sustainable clothes, under her brand Antiform, and you can see the website for it there. She's now built this out to, she has collections each season, and she's stocking right the way through Europe, and she's relying on these local networks of people and their spare resources, and making the most of what's already there. She's stocked in 16 different countries, and she's now got people like Topshop and Urban Outfitters that are coming to her saying, we want some of what you've got, like, help us do this. She can't keep up with the demand. It's really amazing. She was offered like 10,000 jean legs and just didn't know what to do with it. So it was interesting that, like, she took the risk to experiment with a new way of doing things, and actually then the bigger companies are really turning around and saying there's something in this. And she's continuing to explore how she pushes that business model itself. So what does a rental model look like for her clothes, and how can she collaborate with others to do that? Then the second half of this story is the community clothes swap. You know, clothes swapping happens all over the place, but she created a business model around it that actually allowed it to flourish. You pay just £2 to go to the community clothes swap, and you bring a couple of items, and you're free to take away whatever you want. There's nothing kind of rocket science in that. But what's happened quite organically is that little micro enterprises have been created at these clothes shops. You've got someone making cakes and bread, and they've created their own little bakery enterprise. You've got other people that are making curries, and actually again that started these kind of street food economy just out of sharing and doing something that's fun and sociable. The thing that people say they love about these clothes swap events is that they can have their kids looked after, and they don't have to worry about them getting lost in the shops. And this is now extended to a kind of a much bigger community that is organising itself through to Facebook and the like. And they're sharing babysitting services, they're sharing tips on local plumbers, on local builders, and they're really pooling their kind of knowledge and information around themselves. So it's gone way beyond the concept of just sharing clothes and using less resources. There's also a nice story about how apparently about 50% of the people that go every month, they now only buy pants on the high street, and that's it. That's all they buy new. So what Lizzie's really done is just create these different networks, and the clothes swaps has really supported her other brand, and she's just created new networks kind of around and about people. She was open to just seeing where it goes and really experimenting with that. So I guess what that means for you guys is that there's a massive opportunity to be had. There's a huge amount of skills and desirability in those who can really manipulate the web and the technology it has to create something more. And I think there's a real need from people, and particularly bigger businesses as well, to actually to have a bit of that. But there needs to be new models for how big and small players can work together on this. And that's, I think, still a question. We also know there's going to be a whole bunch of funding. There already is around this space. So it's an opportunity that is very live. At Forum for the Future, we're hoping to kind of clash together the right groupings of people with the right motivations to create these kind of networks in the spring, and are really interested in getting people involved in co-creating that. So I guess the final thing I want to put out there, and I'm really intrigued to hear, is kind of what's it going to take for you to be the next Lizzie, or for you to be part of a network that is something like that? And I don't know what the answer is, but I'm really interested to hear from you what it's going to take. So that's me.
Thank you, Louise. That's great. So, before we go to a break, quickly, and have a few beers, we're going to hear from Daniel O'Connor, who founded Warpit in 2011. And Warpit is basically a network, or is trying to create a network of organizations who swap things to create a second or a third life out of products that have already been used and had their first life. And then at the end of that third life, or however long it takes till they get broken, they then go off and be repaired and have further use. And I think that's a really great, idea, and it's something that we all aspire to in the circular economy. So I think Daniel's going to be talking about how we're scaling up the sharing with the use of the internet and the use of the collaborative economy, or what's called the collaborative economy, and how the internet and has made transactions between strangers convenient and acceptable now. So, Daniel, come up. I don't know, sorry. Yeah. Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. It's just 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So, lots of things I was going to say have been said. So, 2 secs. Yeah. So, my name's Daniel. I'm a waste guy. I'm not a tech guy. Any tech people in? Yeah. Entrepreneurs? Local authority? Private sector? Investors? Have I missed anybody? Okay, so I'm a waste guy, and really passionate about waste and getting maximum value from materials. For the next 5 minutes, I'm going to talk about waste. I'm going to talk about collaboration, and then I'll tell you a little bit of story about Warpit and what I've done in the last 3.5 years. So it's only a waste when it hasn't got a home. So there's someone in London today probably disposed of 5 tons of topsoil, right? And there's someone else probably within 10 miles bought 5 tons of topsoil. Yeah. The reason why they can't get together is because communications are so bad, okay? And it's not just on that scale. Even in the same organization, you'll have somebody buying 5 operators' chairs, and you'll have somebody else in the same building throwing out 5 operators' chairs. Happens all the time, okay? So, matching surplus assets, bartering, trading, swapping, nothing new. If anybody is over 35, might remember Noel Edmonds' swap shop. Anyone's going to admit to that? Yeah, so a Noel Edmonds swap shop, you'd phone up and go, I've got a stormtrooper to swap, and someone else would go, yeah, I'll swap you for a scale electric. And, you know, Noel Edmonds would do the swap live on air. Nothing's changed, except these bad boys and the internet has just made that communication 1,000,000 times easier. So you can instantly match needs and wants in a way that both sides gain. Yeah, dead simple. So common theme here is communication. Each presenter's talked about network effect, communication. So I thought, as I was sitting there, as things were being said, I was deleting stuff off my phone and going, right, I can't say that, I can't say that, I can't say that. So what I was going to say about communication was, I've got a platform called Warpit, which is warp-it.co.uk. And the penny dropped for Warpit about 4 years ago. I was walking to some training in Newcastle on an early morning. Obviously, I'm from Newcastle. Has everyone got the Geordie dictionary at hand? So I was walking to some training, and I walked past a building that was being emptied. And there was builders walking out the building, each carrying 2 operators' chairs, each, like a line of ants, walking out the building and putting the chairs in a skip. And if anyone knows what a 40-yard skip is, a 40-yard skip is kind of like the size of a bus. There was 3 of those just getting filled with chairs. And I was like, well, I can't walk past this without finding out what's going on. So I went to speak to the foreman, and he, in a very diplomatic way, just kind of asked what was happening. And he said, oh, we've got to get rid of these chairs. They've got to be gone by 12 o'clock. And I was like, well, give me a couple of hours, and I'll see what I can do. And at the time, I had a mailing list of local charities, which I'd sent stuff to, which I would come across in my working life. And so I emailed this group of local charities, and we got rid of all these chairs by 12 o'clock. And the foreman saved a couple of £1,000 on the skips. He saved probably £10,000 on human time. And all those charities got new chairs. And at that point, I was like, well, that was easy. And, this was about 2008. And, everyone's used to email. Email was getting out of control. Everyone's inboxes were going mental. So I knew I couldn't do an email-style platform like FreeCycle is. So I set about building Warpit. going to skip that because it's been talked about already. Set about building Warpit. Warpit is an online platform where staff in organisations can get, give or loan surplus assets to each other and between organisations. So it's just like FreeCycle, it's just like No Ledman Swap Shop, but it's for organisations. And we have about 20 or 30 corporates in London. We've got over probably 700 charities in London. We've got lots of schools. We've got organisations right across the UK. We give it to charities and schools for free, and we charge corporations. So we've got organisations like AstraZeneca, Oxford University, Newcastle City Council, Dumfries and Galloway Council, Perth Council, so got all these corporates. And their big interest is saving money, really. So they do a lot of internal trades. And I sold this as a procurement, I sold this as a waste tool to start with, and I'm a waste expert, but very quickly realized if you can set up sharing networks, it stops people buying new stuff. And the big environmental impact is the buying new stuff bit. Consumer goods like these, actually this is a great example because I think these are being reused. I think these are old school chairs. But consumer goods like these, in their manufacture, actually generate 90 times their own weight in waste for what you see here. So this is 1 kilo to make the maths easy. Let's say this is 1 kilo. It actually generates 90 kilos worth of weight in the manufacture. So massive sustainability impact up the supply chain. IT is even worse. 4,000 times its own weight in waste when it's mined, transported, manufactured. So massive sustainability impact. And I was obviously hung up on the waste thing, but as soon as I realized it was about procurement, my whole vision changed. It wasn't the back end stuff, it's the front end stuff, stopping people buying stuff you've already got. Jumping around a bit, I thought I'd tell a few stories. So for example, in Sunderland City Council have just won awards for this, even though it's my platform. So in Sunderland, they bought Warpit about 3 years ago. And they saved £45,000 in procurement in the first 4 weeks. So they're like, whoa, let's hire somebody to work on this full time. They've now saved £500,000 in about 3 years. And they now share one Warpit person, a Warpit coordinator, with the university, the hospital, 370 schools, over 300 charities. So in Sunderland, no one's buying anything new and no one's throwing anything out. So a nice, enclosed, smart network. So that's really successful. Pull out a couple of little funny stories. Someone mentioned Leeds before. I got a good one from Leeds. It just fired off my brain. NHS, what they call it, Strategic Health Authority. They didn't exist until last summer. Sorry, switch that around. They stopped existing last summer, and they emptied a property with 3,000 Leverage files. Yeah, wrap it up. Okay, so this is funny. Well, it's funny to me anyway. They emptied a property with 3,000 Leverage files, right? Leverage files. Nobody wants them anymore because they're putting all the data into digital. So Leverage files, hard to recycle, hard to get rid of, hard to stack, fall over, hard to fill a skip with. And in Leeds City Council, in Leeds NHS, put these on, got rid of them in 1 day, all to the college, right? The college had never spoke to the NHS before. They were back to back on the same block, and they found each other through Warpit. So they sent the students out the front door, round the corner, round the corner, round the corner, get the Leverage files and back again. Each student saving £3 a unit, 3,000 Leverage files, £9,000 straight away. So I've covered everything really. One thing I didn't mention was the social benefit. For every ton of furniture we give to charity, that's one full-time employee in the charity. That's how much money it saves them. So there's not just the swap one of saving waste, there's also social benefits in there as well. Okay, very quickly that, so I'll just dip through with any questions afterwards. I'm here all night.
So we're now going to have a panel discussion on some of the talks and things that have come out of the talks with these guys. So to start off, I think, my question to you, okay, I think, first of all, Jack, you okay? So we're going to be taking questions from Twitter, but we're also going to be taking questions from the floor as well. And I'm going to kick things off with a quick question that I have. So I'm really interested in a lot of the inner circles of the circular economy. So things like reuse, things like repair, things like, how do we kind of keep things, make sure things are emotionally durable and that we want to keep them for longer. So I'm wondering how the internet is really helping us move some of those questions forward, or at least if it's not at the moment helping us do it, then how could it help us work with more of the inner circles of the circular economy? So does anybody else want to answer that question? Okay. Yeah.
I think as I said earlier, there's a load of stuff on there about how you keep things cycling longer, and that's only for the good. So I'm 46, and I took the most delight I've taken in anything replacing the screen in my Kindle keyboard the other day. I know it's Amazon, I know, but that took me 10 minutes and gave me the biggest thrill I've had in some time, which is a really sad statement, but it's true, because I know that I'll get another 5 or 6 years out of it. And it was really surprisingly simple and really easy to find. So there's lots of resources out there from the kind of practical side of thing. I think the thing that worries me the most is the emotional durability, is the amount of design power embedded in making us fall in love with things and then fall out of love with things when thing 2 is come out. And that's incredible, actually. And the level of dissatisfaction you see some people register when they pick up whatever the new gadget is and they've got the old one in the other hand, and you can, or isn't it heavier? Or lighter or whatever. It's marginal. It doesn't really make any difference. But it's that the intent, the planned obsolescence from putting a sacrificial component in is long known. We've been doing that since the 1940s. But planned obsolescence because you don't love it anymore, that's really scary, actually, that we can be manipulated so strongly. And I think genuinely we can. And I know that fashion has built its whole world on this. I appreciate that. But I've noticed it more and more, this level of dissatisfaction. But hey, the good news is I've noticed the growth of the alternative, of the I'm hanging on to my Nokia 3310 because it's only 10 years old. And I've seen this kind of inverse snobbery emerge within the kind of Guardian reader classes, of which I put my hand up as a fully fledged subscriber to the Guardian, and I like that. I kind of like that. It's a bit like being a vegan, though. You don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to ask. You get told straight away that someone's a vegan, and you get told straight away that someone is into keeping their stuff alive for longer. So it's kind of a little bit irritating, but I welcome it. I think there is definitely some advances there.
Did you have an answer? You didn't like using
I did, and now I've forgotten. Sorry.
Okay, while we're waiting for that, my thought has always been that there has to be a trade-off. So you can't just say, shall I get the upgrade of the phone? Okay, it's going to cost me some money, or shall I not? You have to understand the flip side. And one of the things you can get potentially through additional information, through tracking, through the knowledge of what is that actually costing, that's a sort of internet-type activity that would help you make the decision better. Making it visible, what is the real cost of it, is an important thing, and without that I don't think you're ever going to let go of that emotional attachment, but if you see the flip side, then maybe you have a proper decision to make.
Go on, sorry.
Yes, kind of on a practical level, I think that all of these bits of kit that we have are going to become actually much more valuable to the people who manufactured them, and they're going to want them back. So either they want to retain the resources because the resources are getting more and more expensive, so the models will change to, they might still keep flipping over the different models, or they'll start doing upgrades and adding new bits onto it. So there's going to be a new desirability for new bits or new programs or new whatevers. And the role of the web in that will be and this is an opportunity where there's going to have to be take-back schemes that are convenient, where, all right, DHL are in your neighbourhood already, dropping something off, and they'll take back your I don't know, speakers or whatever to deliver to the original manufacturers. So those resources stay within that same supply chain. And back at the factory, those speakers are disassembled and redone, you know, rebooted, refurbed.
So, Jack, we're going to get you taking some of the questions from the Twitter. Is there Duncan Walker here?
And I think a lot of the conversations we've had about the intangible things have actually come around governance. So governance and context and kind of mindset and worldviews, all these things that really guide the way we make decisions, we don't really consider that context. So kind of how can you innovate different governance systems that don't feel like people are restricted or mean there's some crazy rule about not having something secondhand used somewhere else. So how can you actually look at those structures and those types of things and innovate that? I don't think that's always solved by digital technology, but you know, the dialogue that you could have around that could be enabled as kind of one example. But we're still trying to work out exactly what that looks like. Our kind of hunch is there's just something much, much more. And I think also looking at the context that you're working in, and it comes a lot down to culture, I think. A bit like you're talking about, you know, what are the memes that are really taking off that could enable circular economy to happen? You just look at the fact that Pharrell Williams and will.i.am have all got recycled denim ranges, and they've got so much attention because their YouTube channels are massive and they have all these subscribers and social media followers. They're normalizing kind of the fact that you can put these products into mainstream stuff. They're making it sexy. So that's a kind of another example of culture being an intangible and that kind of thing that needs to be looked at as well.
While we're on YouTube, I've got 3 daughters and a son, and 2 of the daughters are addicted to YouTubers, and it's just fucking dreadful. It's just 20-minute long adverts for the or haul, as they call it, that they've bought. And my kids have been educated to know that they shouldn't overconsume, but this whole YouTube phenomenon appears at the moment to be spearheaded by demonstrating what you've bought, how much you bought it for, and where you bought it from, and how you too can have glossy straight hair if you Pantene yourself. And I'm certain this tool is for the good. I'm certain it is. But at the moment, I find it just nauseating. And I have to bite my tongue because I don't want to stop what they do. I hope they're not watching this. I don't want to stop what they do. But at the same time, we need to harness some of this bad for good. Because there's nothing wrong with a tool. It's the thing that we're putting through it at the moment. But, you know, Howie's have been doing recycled denim or denim with a recycled PET content for years, not getting nowhere, but not getting very far. As soon as, you know, Pharrell and will.i.am do it, then suddenly everyone's into it. That's a good thing. That's really, really good. It's easy to be cynical. Actually, shouldn't be. It's all really good.
Do you want to... Okay. So, Jack, do we have any more questions?
Okay, question for Louise. Is that working? Thank you. Yeah. So, my question is, we've had the web for 20 years, right? We've been collaborating like crazy for 20 years. So, what's new? What's the big deal now as opposed to over the last 20 years? What's changed? And I can only see changes which are kind of restricting in terms of, we have to be much more careful about security now than we used to be. We have to worry about privacy, all this stuff. It seems to me actually the opportunities are reducing, not increasing.
I think that's a really good question, and I think the difference now is there's a real need, like the environmental reality of this stuff is hitting. Like there's a real purpose for how and why we're using this technology to create a circular economy. And I think what's also happening, and again this is testament to us all being here, there are people who are personally motivated to make a difference, and we're now being equipped with the technology that will enable us to do that. I've been surfing the web and reading about all of this stuff for a long time, but I can now be a creator as well. The tools are in my hands, and I've got a shared sense of purpose because I want to make the world better, I want to make the future better. So I think the difference isn't necessarily the technology, it's kind of the drive and the motivations from a bigger number of people who are really seeing a need to create the change.
I just think one of the things that obviously changes as the number of people on the web increases is that the communities are larger and you can't use the same mechanisms anymore. So 20 years ago, you could assume that the people reading a news group were a small group of trusted people, and unless it began with alt dot, you could share your clothes using some kind of news group mechanism, and then there came a point where it was too big and you couldn't do that anymore because you didn't trust the people and people were using it for other things, and then you would need a different platform specifically designed for that, and eventually we end up with the things people are talking about today. But it's just about the networks of trust working at larger and larger scales, I think. So the thing you're talking about with privacy is a current concern that we would expect over the next few years. Again, there'll be another revolution of things that will get solved, but each time you're going to a bigger and bigger community and being able to share things amongst people who are more strangers to one another.
I think there's a few enablers. First of all, there's like an incremental learning for everybody. Like 20 years ago, there was message boards and email. Then eBay started to get popular, and that was the first time there was ever reciprocal, reputational transactions. So that, you would have never... I used to buy and sell camper vans. I'll tell you a story. I used to buy and sell camper vans, and this is about 2002, 3. And I went to Derby one day, and the guy was like, cash only. And I was like, okay. So I went to the bank, got 5k out of the bank in the backpack, got the train to Derby, got a taxi from the train station to this address. As I drove into the estate, it was like pit bulls in the garden, mattresses on the street. And I'm like, ooh, I've got 5k in my back pocket. And it's like, but then I thought, oh, well, this guy's done all these transactions with these strangers. I can trust by default that he's not going to take my money. So knock on the door, come in, have a cup of tea, da-da-da. It was all fine. And as I walked out, I was like, oh, right, that's it. That's the difference. Like, so now you can trust that stranger without ever never met them any time before. So we've had all these incremental learnings over time. And now what's exploded in the last 5 years is smartphones. And now you're more connected to strangers than you've ever been before. So, it's not hard to think that, Google has the data to be able to go, via your purchases online. You could get your smartphone, scan a house and go, oh, they've got all these different itemized items in this house that I could possibly borrow. So that's what's made it grow in the last over 15 years, I think. Just those incremental learnings.
Okay, so we're running a little bit late. If anybody has to go, we won't be offended. But we're going to carry on with a few more questions, I think. So there's...
My name's Gaynor. I've got a kind of half-formed question in my mind. And it's about really the monetarization of these ideas. There can be great ideas out there that may not necessarily make any money. And, you know, how can they be supported? Because sometimes the kind of, I mean, and I'm interested, Danny, how your kind of model works. But how other models where you don't, the desire to, or the need to perhaps make money out of it can compromise the efficacy of the idea itself. And is there any form of, you know, if there's government funding in there to help this or whatever, but, you know, these ideas, some of them can save huge amounts of money, but not necessarily make any money for the person who's doing it. They may do it for the goodness of their heart, but there's got to be some more, in order for this really to work, there's got to be something a bit more effective than that to kind of drive it and enable it to happen.
Okay. Who would like to answer that? Mark?
Yeah, and then you, I guess. So the new ways of making money are really weird. I don't understand them. So the guy that bent his iPhone 6 on camera earned $1.2 million from doing that. I don't know how he did that. I've no idea. But a certain amount of views gives you a certain amount of income, and suddenly you're earning shed loads of money from wrecking your product, which I genuinely don't understand. I have a friend who used to be a pop photographer, a music photographer, and he made okay money, and he's now a blogger and a whatever. He's a social media expert. He made more money selling his photographs that he took in real life in Second Life than he ever made selling them in real life. Now, I don't understand these things. So the ways of making money are changing, completely changing. And you know, for things like Airbnb, you can see how they make money. You can see how people who charge a subscription service or a percentage can make money. And I think the early rush of internet entrepreneurs, there was not great business cases behind some of those businesses. I think we've gone beyond that now, and I think we are beginning to see really solid business cases that sit behind some of the web services. I'm not saying I understand all of that. I genuinely don't understand how Twitter advertising works. I just ignore it. But someone obviously thinks it's worth spending money on because they're getting a return. I'm just too old to get it, I think. But there are solid business models out there, and the P2P, the peer-to-peer models, they're incredible. I would never book another hotel again, ever. I'll just use Airbnb. It makes a massive amount of money. Yeah, please.
I discovered this thing where you could just borrow things off people, borrow tools off people the other day, and I've borrowed something, which is great because I never was going to buy the power tool to do that job. Now I've done the job, I can give it back. But that doesn't make, I don't see how that makes any money, but it's a very good idea.
The person that you borrowed it from will borrow something. It's like an old... Yeah, or like I set up Bradford Letts years and years ago, and we never made any money out of it. But I got free homeopathy, and I know, instead, and I gave bike maintenance, and it was like that. It was so bloody middle class. You have aromatherapy every night of the week, but you couldn't get your plumbing done, and that's not a euphemism. Sorry, and so. I guess that's a giving-getting thing. It's not a money thing, and I guess there were two broad models. But Daniel, how does yours make cash?
I don't know. No, don't ask me how the economy works. So the question is, how do you monetize these ideas? There's got to be an unmet need. You've got to be solving a problem. Whether it's, the chap Sam from Street Bank is here, actually, who, Street Bank, you're allowed to rent, you can loan out your stuff within the community. Stuff, I mean, bits and bobs in your shed and your time as well. So I think that's what you just mentioned. We charge a subscription model to corporates. So a corporation will pay like $2,000 to access the network for the year. The record return on investment for a corporate was 1 day. So the trades internally paid for that subscription in 1 day. That was St Andrews University. I give the whole network to charities and schools for free. So even though that's a freebie, actually they provide a service to the others because they want that stuff, and the big corporations want to get rid of it. So it's a win-win. But but monetizing it, like Mark says, there's loads of different ways. We could have explored oops, just kick the water over. We explored a transactional fee every time there was a trade, but lots of different problems with that, dealing with procurement departments. The flat subscription rate, how did I price it? I just wondered, well, how much is it going to cost them to build one internally? And I thought, well, I'll go half, you know. So it was like no science involved, just like an educated guess. If you are looking for ways to monetize ideas, there's a really good guy who does a podcast called Pat Flynn, and he's what he does is it's a bit gimmicky, but he does a thing called niche marketing. You can look that up. And he does a podcast once every couple of weeks, and he tells people how he does his activities online and how he generates money, and he publishes his income and all that sort of thing. That would be a really good place to start, because he talks about blogging and YouTube channels and making a brand of yourself and all this sort of stuff. If you're looking for inspiration, Pat Flynn is called.
Okay, so cool. I guess so. One last question from the audience. Karina? Karina?
Hi. I'm going to be a little bit controversial, because obviously this has all been largely about the circular economy, and in terms of thinking differently and around disruptive innovation. Do we think it's disruptive enough? Or is the circular economy just the new way of maintaining the status quo? And I guess for me, this comes from this place of thinking that we need to reframe capitalism, so it's back in service of society, working within the planetary boundaries. And that essentially means the end of mass consumption. And I'm just curious to know if you think that this is maintaining status quo or is radical enough.
I think this is your question, isn't it, Mark?
Thank you. That's a brilliant question, Ms. Gaffney. The challenge we've got is we need to make more money by selling less stuff, and we need to make people less ill by eating better food. These are really hard things to do. Capitalism isn't just a little bit broken, it's completely buggered. And it's propped up by a load of subsidies and invisible hands that government throws at it to support the unsupportable, frankly. So the sooner it collapses gently, I think would be nicer than collapses violently, the better. This is one of the answers. It isn't the total answer. My fear for the circular economy is that it's all been lovely verbiage and a little bit of hot air. And as I said earlier, every single big company I work with is doing something on the circular economy. So that makes it like sustainability was in the late 90s, i.e., worthless if we're not careful. So the spectre that you raise is a very, very real one, that we devalue it by everyone adopting it. And we use it, as you say, to justify what we're already doing. There is I think, some light at the end of the tunnel. You know, you've only got to look at the collapse of the supermarkets, and I think Asda are about the only ones that are holding their own at the moment. The other three are, I won't say in free fall, but in confidence free fall. People are finding alternative models, and I'm not saying that the new hard discounters are any better ethically or in terms of the way they source. I genuinely don't know. But we are seeing some seismic shifts to the way that we do business. And that can only be a good thing. So as a part of that, the circular economy is really, really welcome. It isn't the only solution. We have to buy less, we have to live more, and we need to just not judge ourselves by what we own. And it's really hard. I've just done a whole year, nearly, of no new clothes and shoes, which I'm a bit of a peacock, so it's been very difficult. Actually, it's been brilliant, because we use clothes as antidepressants, and we buy things to make us feel better. And you see people at the till, getting to the till and panicking because what else can I get? What else can I? And actually, that's just wrong, not just environmentally, that's wrong morally. And there's a great bit of graffiti, I can't remember where I saw it. It's a big poster and it said, "Sorry, the lifestyle you ordered is out of stock." And I just thought, yeah, this is awesome. We've all become, we've all become kind of consumers to the point of death. Brands have become lifestyle brands. No. Do we need it? Does it work for us? Yes. Then buy it. Next year's challenge for me is nothing new unless I can't get it secondhand. Not just clothes, everything. Not food. And that's going to be really, really challenging. But those models, they're broken, and it is time they ended.
And I think from what we found, the circular economy means so many things to so many people, and as you say, Mark, there's a lot of chat. But for some reason, there's sort of renewed energy around all of this, which is interesting and could be harnessed in a really positive way. And I think the circular economy could be used to take a more systemic approach to kind of business, beyond just looking at value chains, which are one-way flows. Actually, it is a way of people seeing different interlinks in a way that they haven't necessarily otherwise. Whether it's acted on in exactly the right way, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's dangerous ground. But almost let's not stamp on the enthusiasm that there is kind of too soon. But I think the real pioneers of the circular economy are the ones that are motivated by a completely different set of values from the people I've spoken to, and are very pure to those as well. So how can we actually amplify those stories and really replicate those kind of successes, and enable other people to shift away from kind of the consumption models? That's the tricky thing.
So I think that's everything, isn't it? I think in terms of the work that Mark and I have done as well on the circular economy, we think about this very broadly and think about, all of the resource flows and things that don't usually make it in, like water access and actually sourced and fair materials and fair products and all sorts of other stuff. So it's really a systemic problem that needs to be answered. And I think that's a lot of what's come up tonight, isn't it? It's a little bit broader than what you would usually talk about with the circular economy, which I think has been quite nice. So I think that just about wraps everything up, really.
All right, well, yeah, thanks so much. I'd like have a hand, please, for our panelists. It's been really, really interesting.